Imagine 5,000 years ago, in an era when we thought women had no rights, Sumerian women were starting businesses, owning property, and even ruling countries as queens. This isn't just legend, we have dozens of historical documents. Sumer was perhaps the most woman-friendly civilization in history. Tonight, we'll discover the story of the most powerful women of the ancient world together. From queens who established thrones to commanders who led wars, from writers who changed history with their poetry. This isn't just a story about women's rights. This is a magnificent journey showing an alternative path for human civilization. Around 3500 BCE, while women were still considered property in most parts of the world, Sumer presented a completely different picture. Women had economic independence, could make contracts in their own names, and could buy property. How was this possible? The answer lay hidden in Sumer's foundational religious system. In the Sumerian pantheon, half of the most powerful gods were female. Enheduanna was the goddess of love and war. Ninhursag was the mother goddess. Ereshkigal was the queen of the underworld. These goddesses weren't just passive figures, they were active, powerful, decision-making characters. This religious system reflected into daily life as well. If goddesses were powerful, then women could be powerful too. This logic was the cornerstone of Sumerian society. Archaeological findings show that this theoretical equality was also valid in practice. Trade contracts, property deeds, and even court decisions written with women's names have been found. But what's truly surprising is that women were active, not only in economic but also in political spheres. Born around 2285 BCE, Enheduanna was not only history's first female writer, but also a very powerful political figure. The daughter of Sargon, king of Akkad, Enheduanna was the high priestess of the Nana temple in the city of But she wasn't an ordinary priestess. Enheduanna was truly a stateswoman. She mediated in political crises, conducted religious reforms, and even helped suppress rebellions. Her written works, hymns to Inanna, didn't just carry literary value. These texts were also political manifestos. By exalting Inanna's power, she defended the legitimacy of female leadership. In her most famous work, Exaltation of Inanna, these lines appear: "I am Enheduanna, the high priestess of Inanna. I am the spokesperson of truth that no one can oppose. I am the woman who spreads the goddess's power to the world." These words weren't just religious, but a political declaration. Enheduanna was proclaiming the divine source of female authority. The political crisis she experienced during her time was a test of this power. Around 2250 BCE, a great rebellion broke out in the Akkadian Empire. The Lulubi tribe and local lords rose against the Sargonic dynasty, and one of the targets of this rebellion was Enheduanna. Because Enheduanna wasn't just a priestess, she was the symbol of political control in Akkad's southern regions. Her position in represented the power of central authority. The rebels expelled Enheduanna from the temple. They sent her into exile. This wasn't just a political move, but also an attack on female authority. But Enheduanna didn't submit. The poems she wrote during exile became documents of her struggle. "They expelled me from my temple, but Inanna's power is with me. I will return, I will claim my right, because I am not just a woman, but the representative of the goddess." And she truly did return. About 2 years later, when central authority regained its power, Enheduanna also reclaimed her place in the temple. This event showed that female leadership wasn't just symbolic, but real political power. Around 2500 BCE, an extraordinary event occurred in the city of Kish. A woman named Kubaba seized the throne, and established her own dynasty. This was the first known female ruler in Mesopotamian history. The Sumerian king list gives this information about Kubaba. Kubaba, the tavern woman, strengthened Kish and ruled for 100 years. But this simple description hides the truth. Kubaba wasn't just a lucky tavern keeper. She was politically astute, strategically thinking, and a powerful leader. How did Kubaba's story begin? According to legend, the god Enlil gave her kingship, but archaeological evidence tells a more complex story. In that time, Kish was a great city-state ruled by powerful kings, but constant wars, economic crises, and political instability had weakened the city. Traditional male leadership had failed. That in this environment, Kubaba offered an alternative path. She promised diplomacy instead of war, wisdom instead of force, justice instead of tyranny, and she succeeded. Her 100-year reign became Kish's golden age. Kubaba's 100-year reign wasn't coincidental. She had developed a different management system from her male predecessors. The first difference was in war policy. Traditional kings were constantly pursuing expansion. Kubaba adopted a defense-focused strategy. She made trade agreements with neighboring cities and established diplomatic marriages. The second difference was seen in domestic policy. Kubaba implemented reforms that strengthened women's rights. She expanded women's inheritance rights and increased their freedom to trade. The third difference was her religious policy. Kubaba encouraged the worship of goddesses. She organized magnificent festivals for Inanna, Ninersag, and Ereshkigal. These reforms affected not only Kish, but all of Mesopotamia. Women's rights began to expand in neighboring cities as well. Kubaba's greatest achievement was continuing her dynasty. Her son Puzur-Sin continued her policies. The dynasty lasted a total of 150 years. This success showed that female leadership could be not just exceptional, but systematic. Around 2400 BCE, another powerful queen named Shagshag emerged in the city of Mary. Her story shows the military dimension of female leadership. Shagshag ascended to the throne after the death of her husband Iku-Shamagan, but she didn't settle for being just a regent queen. She actively practiced military leadership. Tablets in the Mary archives show that Shagshag personally made war plans and commanded armies. She even personally appeared on battlefields during some campaigns. Her most famous victory was the great battle she won against the city-state of Ebla. In this battle, tactics showing Shagshag's strategic genius were used. Traditional male commanders would prefer direct assault, but Shagshag used siege tactics. She forced Ebla to surrender by starving them. This victory proved that female commanders could be as effective as men. Shagshag's fame spread throughout Mesopotamia. Her military achievements opened a new perspective on female leadership. Queen Puabi, who lived around 2450 BCE, represented a different type of power, economic power. The treasures found in her tomb in Ur show her incredible wealth: golden crown, jewelry, precious objects. But these weren't just indicators of wealth. Puabi's wealth came from her economic control power. She was the main figure managing Ur's trade networks. Spices from the Far East, metals from Anatolia, precious stones from India, all passed through the trade system under Puabi's control. The objects in her tomb are evidence of international trade. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, pearls from Sri Lanka, silver from Iran. Puabi was at the center of a global trade network. But Puabi's real power was her ability to transform economic networks into political power. She turned trade agreements into political alliances. The mass burial in her tomb, 77 people buried with her, shows how powerful she was. This wasn't just wealth, but a sign of absolute authority. Around 2350 BCE, a queen named Baranam Tara lived in the city of Lagash. She was the representative of a different type of power, administrative capability. Baranam Tara played an active role during her husband Lugalanda's reign, but her real area was state administration. Thousands of tablets in the Lagash archives show Baranam Tara's administrative system. She had created the first examples of modern bureaucracy systems. Her system worked as follows: central recording system, where every transaction was recorded. Department organization. Different tasks were carried out by different departments. Performance evaluation. Official success was evaluated. Resource planning. Income expenditure balances were calculated. This system worked so effectively that Lagash became one of the most prosperous city-states. Baranam Tara's success proved that women could show superior achievement, not only in war and diplomacy, but also in administrative fields. The power of Sumerian queens didn't emerge in a vacuum. Behind this was a powerful goddess culture. Inanna was the most important goddess. She was the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, as well as the goddess of war and political power. This dual characteristic was very important. Inanna's famous epic, Descent to the Underworld, was a symbolic story of female power. Inanna challenged her sister Ereshkigal's kingdom, trying to seize her power. In this story, the struggle between two powerful women is told, and in the end, both remain powerful in their own domains. In Ursag, the mother goddess was the symbol of creativity and fertility, but she wasn't a passive figure either. She played an active role in the Council of Gods and influenced major decisions. Ereshkigal was the absolute ruler of the underworld. Even male gods showed respect for her authority. These powerful goddess models gave confidence and inspiration to Sumerian women. The power of Sumerian women wasn't only in the political sphere, they were also very active in the economic field. Archaeological findings show the existence of female merchants. They made trade contracts in their own names and conducted long-distance trade. A female merchant named Kandalanu had a trade network extending as far as India. Her contracts resembled modern international trade agreements. Female artisans were also very successful. They specialized especially in the textile field. Sumerian fabrics were famous throughout the ancient world, and most of these were produced in female workshops. The most interesting example is a female architect named Nundada. She specialized in temple construction. The structures she designed were considered engineering marvels. This economic independence formed the basis for women's access to political power. The Sumerian legal system granted very broad rights to women. This was a revolutionary approach for that period. The Ur-Nammu laws, 2100 BCE, protected women's inheritance rights. Women could inherit from their fathers and husbands. In some cases, they could inherit more than their male siblings. Divorce rights were also very advanced. Women could divorce their husbands under certain conditions. In this case, they could take half of the assets. The most surprising right was the right to start businesses. Women could start businesses and trade without their husband's permission. Court records show that women actively participated in legal processes. There were even female lawyers. This legal infrastructure prepared the legitimate ground for female leadership. Sumerian women were also active in the field of education. Girls could participate in the Adaba school system, together with boys. The most famous example is again Enheduanna. She was not only a poet, but also a mathematician and astronomer. The astronomical tablets she wrote had scientific value. The education level of female priests was very high. They knew not only religious rituals, but also specialized in law, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. At the temple school in Nippur, there were female teachers. They taught both female and male students. This education system allowed women to develop their intellectual capacities. From around 2000 BCE, female leadership in Sumer began to decline. What were the reasons for this? The first reason was the change in military technology. Bronze weapons and organized armies made war more brutal. In this situation, physical strength became more important. The second reason was the influence of Semitic tribes. Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians had more patriarchal social structures. As their influence increased, women's rights decreased. The third reason was economic change. The transition from agricultural economy to trade economy required long-distance travel. This also increased male dominance. The fourth reason was religious change. Male gods, Marduk, Asur, became more important. The role of goddesses decreased. The fifth reason was the collapse of city-states. Central empires brought more hierarchical, male-dominated structures. This process of change was slow but permanent. The impact of Sumerian queens wasn't limited to Mesopotamia. Their legacy influenced world history. In Egypt, powerful queens like Hatshepsut and Nefertiti may have been influenced by the Sumerian model because there was intense cultural exchange between Egypt and Mesopotamia. In Greece, the cult of Athena may have been inspired by Inanna. The warrior goddess image may have come from Sumer. In Rome, powerful female figures, Livia Agrippina, resembled Sumerian queen traditions. In China, powerful empresses like Wu Ziqian used similar power models. In modern times, the women's rights struggle can draw inspiration from the Sumerian model because Sumer historically proves that female leadership is possible. The power of Sumerian queens isn't just legend. There is concrete archaeological evidence. Queen Puabi's tomb is the most striking example of this. The golden crown, jewelry, and precious objects found prove her status. Enheduanna's tablets show that she was a real historical figure. Not only poems, but also administrative documents were found. Seals bearing Kubaba's name prove that she was a real ruler. Baranamtera's administrative tablets show her bureaucratic capabilities. This evidence shows that Sumerian queens were real historical figures, not mythological ones. In Sumer, female priests possessed not only religious, but also political power. The priestess, high priestess position, was a very effective political office. These priests had the authority to manage temple treasuries. This meant great economic power. They also managed religious ceremonies. This meant social influence. Most importantly, they had a say in the king's selection processes. Because kings needed to receive divine approval, this system provided women with the opportunity to take part in official political processes. How do Sumerian women's rights look when compared to modern standards? In terms of economic rights, Sumerian women were more advantaged than modern women in some areas because economic independence was easier. In terms of political rights, selected examples were extraordinarily successful, but the situation was more limited for the general female population. In terms of educational rights, the number of women receiving education was limited, but those who received education could reach very high levels. In terms of legal rights, they were more advanced than modern systems in some subjects. Overall, the Sumerian system offered very good opportunities for elite women. Why did female power in Sumer disappear? This is one of the most important questions in gender history. The first factor was technological change. Iron weapons made war more lethal. In this situation, the physical strength factor increased. The second factor was economic structural change. The transition from agricultural society to trade society required long-distance travel. This created male advantage. The third factor was political structural change. The transition from city-states to empires brought more hierarchical systems. The fourth factor was religious change. Male god cults replaced goddess cults. The fifth factor was demographic change. Constant wars reduced the male population. This led to the empowerment of the remaining men. The combination of these factors led to the decline of female power. What if the female leadership model in Sumer had continued? How would world history have changed? There might have been less war, because female leaders preferred diplomacy and trade methods. Science might have developed faster, because female leaders allocated more resources to education and research. Art and culture might have been richer, because female patrons paid more attention to aesthetic values. The economy might have been more stable, because female leaders tended to make long-term planning. Social equality might have developed earlier, because female leaders supported marginal groups more. Of course, these are speculations, but the Sumerian example shows that alternative management models are possible. What can the modern feminist movement learn from the Sumerian legacy? First lesson: female leadership is possible. The Sumerian example is historical proof of this. Second lesson: economic independence is critical. The power of Sumerian women was based on their economic freedom. Third lesson: education is very important. Figures like Enheduanna show what educated women can achieve. Fourth lesson: religious cultural models are effective. The powerful goddess culture provided legitimacy to female leadership. Fifth lesson: systematic struggle is necessary. Sumerian women achieved systematic, not individual success. Modern feminism can develop more effective strategies using these lessons. Our knowledge about Sumerian queens is still limited. Thousands of tablets haven't been deciphered yet. New archaeological discoveries may reveal more powerful female figures. In recent excavations, seals of female administrators have been found. These seals show the existence of female leaders whose identities haven't been fully determined yet, especially excavations in the cities of Kish, Sippar, and Adab, or revealing new female figures. These figures might be even more powerful than the queens we know. In the future, we may need to rewrite Sumerian women's history, because the data we have is just the visible part of the iceberg. In Sumerian art, the representation of powerful female figures is very impressive. These representations show that female power was socially accepted. In Enheduanna's sculptures, she is shown both feminine and powerful. This dual characteristic reflects the essence of Sumerian women's understanding. The representation of queen figures in reliefs at equal size with men is noteworthy. This is visual evidence of status equality, especially in reliefs from Urt. Queens are seen playing active roles in military ceremonies. This shows the military dimension of female leadership. Even in jewelry designs, powerful female symbols are used. Lion, eagle, scorpion, and other power symbols are combined with female figures. This artistic tradition shows how Sumerian culture perceived female power. The economic foundations of Sumerian female power were very solid. This power was based on real economic control, not just symbolic. Temple economies were largely managed by female priests. These temples were the largest economic institutions of the period. The textile industry was almost entirely under female control, and textiles were Sumer's largest export item. Luxury goods trade, jewelry, perfume, cosmetics was the domain of female merchants. This sector provided high profit margins. In agricultural enterprises, women held important managerial positions, especially in gardening and animal husbandry. This economic power had a real foundation that could be transformed into political power. Sumerian queens were also active in international diplomacy. This shows that their power was not just local, but regional. Kubaba's diplomatic network extended from Anatolia to the Zagros Mountains. She established powerful alliances through marriage politics, and Enheduanna's sphere of influence covered all southern regions of the Akkadian Empire. She provided political unity through cultural diplomacy. Kubaba's trade networks extended to India. This showed the power of economic diplomacy. The relations of Mary Queens with Egypt show the importance of the female factor in Near Eastern diplomacy. This international activity shows that Sumerian female leadership was recognized worldwide. Sumerian women were also pioneers in technology and innovation. This is evidence of their intellectual capacities. The biggest innovations in textile technology were developed in female workshops. Dyeing techniques, weaving methods, fabric designs. In the cosmetics and perfume industry, female artisans created very advanced formulas. These formulas were early examples of chemistry. In medicine, female healers achieved important developments, especially in birth and women's health issues. In astronomy, female priests' observation records were very valuable. Enheduanna's astronomical tablets have scientific value. In architecture, female architects developed innovative designs, especially in temple architecture. These technological contributions show that female intelligence was no different from men's. The female voice is very strong in Sumerian literature. This voice carries not only personal, but also political dimensions. When Enheduanna's poems can be read not only as religious, but also as feminist texts. She expresses female experience in universal language. Wenana mythology is the most important textual source of female power. These texts provide the theological foundation of female leadership. Praise poems of queens show the social acceptance of female achievement. These poems create role models. Even love poems are written from a female perspective. This also shows the presence of the female voice in literature. This literary legacy proves the historical continuity of female experience. The collapse of Sumerian female power was the result of systemic change. Understanding this collapse contains lessons for today. First stage, military technology change. The transition from Bronze Age to Iron Age changed the character of war. Second stage, cultural change. With the influence of Semitic tribes, patriarchal values strengthened. Third stage, economic transformation. The transition from agriculture to trade created male advantage. Fourth stage, political centralization. The transition from city-states to empires increased hierarchy. Fifth stage, ideological change. The weakening of goddess cults eroded female authority. This process lasted about 500 years. It was a slow but permanent change. Are there female leaders today who reflect the Sumerian queen model? In the economic field, female entrepreneurs resemble the Puabi model. They are building their own economic empires. In the political field, female heads of state follow the Kubaba model, diplomacy-focused, long-term approach. In the intellectual field, female scientists continue the Enheduanna model, an approach that combines science and art. In the social field, female activists keep the Sumerian tradition alive. System-changing struggle. These parallels show that the Sumerian model is still valid today. Can the Sumerian female power model rise again in the future? Technological factors are creating female advantage. The physical strength factor is decreasing. The intellectual strength factor is increasing. Economic factors are also positive. The knowledge economy is more suitable for female talents. Social factors are changing. Equality values are strengthening. Political factors are developing. Democratization is increasing female participation. Cultural factors are transforming. Feminist values are spreading. The combination of these factors could create a new Sumerian renaissance. Thousands of years later, what message do the Sumerian queens give us? First message: power can be not only physical, but also intellectual. Second message: leadership can be not only tyranny, but also service. Third message: success can be not only individual, but also social. Fourth message: change is always possible. Fifth message: the past can be a source of inspiration for the future. These messages are valid not only for women, but for all humanity. What were they thinking when Kubaba sat on her throne, when Enheduanna wrote poetry, when Puabi managed her treasures? Were they living only for their own times, or were they leaving messages for future generations? Maybe they didn't know, but they were women who changed the course of history. They proved that female leadership wasn't just a dream, but could be reality. When a woman becomes a CEO today, when a female president is elected, when a female scientist wins the Nobel Prize, they're actually continuing the tradition started by Sumerian queens, because they had proven that women could also be powerful, could be leaders, could change the world, and this proof never disappeared. Sumerian civilization collapsed. Their cities were destroyed. Their languages were forgotten, but the legacy of their queens continued to live. In every powerful woman, there is Kubaba's determination. In every creative woman, there is Enheduanna's inspiration. In every successful woman, there is Puabi's vision. Their story isn't just the story of the past. This is also the story of the future, because powerful women never end. They continue across generations. Sumerian queens taught us this. Being a woman isn't weakness, it's strength. Leadership isn't just men's monopoly. Change is always possible. And perhaps most importantly, history never forgets powerful women. Every woman changing the world today is actually the heir of those ancient queens. She's continuing the revolution they started. This revolution isn't over. Maybe it never will be, because every new generation of women carries the spirit of Sumerian queens, and this spirit never dies. From Kubaba to Inanna, from Enheduanna to Puabi, the chain of powerful women never broke. That chain stretched from ancient Sumer to the present day, and it will continue to stretch into the future, because powerful women are history's greatest force. The story ends like this, but the real story continues to live in every powerful woman, because Sumerian queens aren't just historical figures who lived in the past. They are sources of inspiration, living in the spirit of every brave woman. And this inspiration will never end